So normally when we talk about planning our lives, we kind of expect to have total control.
Right. We want everything to be predictable.
Yeah, exactly. We want life to be like reading a really detailed map.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you find your current location, you trace the solid, clear line to your destination, and then you just follow the roads.
You turn left, you go straight for 5 miles, and boom, you arrive.
Right. It feels very safe. We just really love having signs that tell us precisely what to do.
We do. I mean, we crave that predictability. A clear map just kind of removes all that anxiety of the unknown.
But the thing is, the moment you step into the world of big dreams like, when you start looking for your true personal purpose, that detailed map becomes completely useless.
Yeah, it really is.
You basically find yourself standing in the middle of a massive desert, and there are no roads.
No street signs at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All you have in your hand is a simple compass. You just have a general direction, not a step-by-step plan.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
It is. And so today we are doing a deep dive into a global phenomenon that has acted like a compass for millions of people.
I am so excited for this one.
Me too. We are diving into Paulo Coelho's famous book, The Alchemist. And the basic facts about this book are just staggering.
They really are.
Like, it was published back in 1988.
Right.
And since then, it has sold over 65 million copies.
Which is just, I mean, that number makes it the best-selling Portuguese-language book in the entire history of publishing.
Wow. In all of history.
Yeah, and it has reached readers in 80 different languages all across the globe.
That is just incredible. But I think the craziest part of that success is the timeline of its creation.
Oh, yeah. The speed is wild.
Right. Paulo Coelho wrote this entire book in just 2 weeks.
14 days.
14 days. I mean, for a novel that has touched so many lives, that speed is almost unbelievable to me.
Well, when journalists actually asked him how he managed to write a masterpiece so fast, he gave a very interesting answer.
What did he say?
He said the story was, quote, already living inside him.
Oh, wow. I love that. Already living inside him.
Yeah, and that internal origin makes complete sense when you examine the structure of the book.
How so?
Well, it does not read like a modern novel with complicated plot twists. It reads like an ancient story that has just always existed.
Right, right. Like a classic myth. So just to give a brief summary for anyone who has not read it, The Alchemist is a parable.
Exactly. A parable is just a simple story that is designed to teach a moral or spiritual lesson.
Right. And our main character is a young shepherd named Santiago.
Yes, Santiago.
And he lived a very normal, quiet life, taking care of his sheep in Spain.
He's just a regular guy. He likes to travel through the hills. He does not start out as a hero.
No, not at all. He is very ordinary. But then Santiago starts having this recurring dream.
Right, the dream about the treasure.
Exactly. In this dream, a child tells him that a massive hidden treasure is waiting for him far away, near the pyramids of Egypt.
And after asking for some advice, Santiago makes a really terrifying choice.
He does. He sells his sheep.
He just leaves his comfortable, safe life completely behind.
And he travels across the ocean and the desert to find this gold.
But the core lesson of the story actually reveals itself during this dangerous journey.
Right. Because it's not really about the physical gold, is it?
No, not at all. Santiago eventually discovers that the true treasure was not the gold in Egypt.
Right.
The real treasure was the wisdom, the strength, and the understanding he built inside himself while trying to reach the goal.
Now, when we summarize it like that, it sounds like a pleasant little fairy tale.
It does. Very simple.
But the psychological depth hiding inside this simple story is enormous.
Oh, absolutely massive.
So our mission for this deep dive today is to look at this book as a piece of art that asks massive philosophical questions about human existence.
Right. We are definitely not treating this like a normal self-help manual today.
No, definitely not. You are not going to find a 5-step plan to get rich quickly here.
Reading this book as a practical guide for financial success would just completely miss the point. It is a story about the internal human condition.
Exactly. We want to unpack the specific philosophy Coelho presents. We're going to look at how we find our life's purpose, how we interpret the random events that happen to us, and why we are so terrified of failing.
And because a true deep dive requires looking at all angles, we're also going to examine some honest criticism of the book's ideas.
Right, because no book is perfect. We need to see where this philosophy might fall short in the real world.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you, the listener, a direct question to hold in your mind as we begin.
Little homework.
Just a little bit. Have you ever had a dream, maybe a wild ambition when you were younger, that you eventually gave up on?
Think about that for a second.
Yeah. Did you let it go because someone told you to be realistic? Or perhaps you convinced yourself it was just impossible?
It happens to so many of us.
It really does. Today, we will explore why we abandon our dreams and how this story offers a totally different way to live.
The best place to start this exploration is, well, with the central engine of the entire book.
Okay, lay it on me.
Everything in The Alchemist revolves around one major concept that Coelho calls the personal legend.
The personal legend, right.
Yeah. Before we look at any other tools or ideas, we really must understand what this term actually means.
Okay, let's break down the personal legend. In everyday, simple language, what are we actually talking about here?
A personal legend is your unique, specific destiny.
Your destiny?
Right. It is the one thing you are truly meant to do in your lifetime, and it represents the highest version of the person you are meant to become.
So it's not just like picking a major in college.
No, no. Coelho views this not as a random career choice, but as a deep internal calling. It's this undeniable pull toward a certain path.
Now, a calling implies a voice, but this isn't like an external voice telling you what to do, right?
Exactly. It is an internal recognition of what makes you feel alive.
And Coelho argues a fascinating point about this internal voice. He suggests that during childhood, every single person knows their personal legend.
Yes. Children have a completely clear understanding of what they want to do with their lives.
It's so true. If you ask a 5-year-old child what they want to be when they grow up, they never hesitate.
Never.
They give you these huge, fearless answers. You know, they want to be an astronaut, a famous painter, a deep-sea explorer, or, I don't know, a veterinarian for wild tigers.
Right. They never say, I want to be a middle manager in a paper supply company because it offers a stable dental plan.
Exactly. They just don't think like that.
Because children dream without boundaries. Their minds do not yet understand the concept of limits.
Everything feels entirely possible to them.
Right. They have not yet learned to fear failure. But as we grow older, the environment just changes us.
Yeah. Adult life and societal expectations begin to crush that innocent certainty.
We are taught a very dangerous word.
Which word?
Realistic.
Oh, yeah. Be realistic.
Society demands that we compromise our wild dreams for safety and stability.
Right. And Coelho states that this process causes us to betray our own dreams long before we even make a genuine attempt to achieve them.
That word betrayal carries so much weight.
It really does. We are not just changing our minds. We are actively turning our backs on our true selves.
But I think we need to separate a true personal legend from basic, everyday ambition. They are not the same thing.
That's a good point. How are they different?
The distinction is vital. A personal legend is completely different from a desire for wealth or fame. Let's look at a practical example.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine someone who wants to be involved in music. There is a profound difference between the statement, I want to create music, and the statement, I want to become a rich and famous pop star.
Ah, I see. The internal motivation is completely different in those two statements.
Exactly. I want to create music represents a potential personal legend. It focuses on the act of doing.
Right. It is about expressing your inner world.
Right. If your legend is to create music, you will feel joy and purpose, even if you are just playing a cheap guitar alone in your bedroom with zero audience.
The act itself is the reward.
Yes. I want to be a rich pop star, on the other hand, is purely a desire for an external reward. It is a financial goal wrapped in ego.
That makes total sense. And that actually brings us back to the compass metaphor from earlier.
Right, the compass.
A personal legend acts as your internal compass. It simply points you north. It says your direction involves creating music.
But a compass does not promise that the path north will be paved and easy.
No, it doesn't. It does not guarantee you will find a chest of gold at the end of the road either.
It only guarantees that you are walking in the correct direction for your soul.
And following that compass is incredibly difficult because the path is blocked by massive walls.
Huge walls. In the book, Coelho identifies two major obstacles that stop almost every person from fulfilling their destiny.
Okay, what is the first major obstacle?
The first one is society.
Society. And when we say society, we mean the people around us, right? Our parents, our school teachers, our friends, and just the general culture we grew up in.
Exactly. The moment you announce that you're going to follow your compass, society will typically push back hard.
They really do.
They will tell you that your dream is impossible. They'll call you foolish or irresponsible.
But the tragedy of this pushback is that it rarely comes from a place of malice or evil.
No, it's usually out of love.
Right. When parents tell their teenager to stop dreaming about writing novels and instead go study accounting, they're usually doing it because they care.
They want their child to be safe from poverty.
Exactly. They want them to have a reliable income and a comfortable life. They push the realistic map into the child's hands because the desert just looks too dangerous.
That protective instinct is natural, but the result is devastating.
Yeah, the dream gets crushed under the weight of practical advice.
The child listens, puts the compass away in a drawer, and takes the safe map. Most people surrender at this very first wall.
They never even take step one.
Right.
So let's imagine someone who survives that first obstacle. Let's say a person has a fierce, stubborn spirit.
Okay, a stubborn dreamer.
They ignore the warnings of society, they put the map away, and they step into the desert anyway. What is the second wall they hit?
The second obstacle is much harder to defeat because it lives inside the mind.
Okay, what is it?
The second wall is fear. Specifically, the deep, paralyzing fear of failure.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We all experience fear, but failing at a personal legend feels uniquely dangerous to our psychology, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Look at it this way. If you take a job in an office just to pay the rent, and you fail at that job, it is embarrassing, but it does not destroy your soul.
Right, because you can easily protect your ego by saying, I didn't really care about that job anyway. It wasn't my true passion.
Exactly. You have a psychological shield.
Yeah.
But if you try to achieve your ultimate dream, the thing you care about more than anything else, and you fail, the pain is devastating.
Because you cannot use the shield.
Right. You put your whole heart into it, and you were still not good enough.
That type of failure feels like a rejection of your actual identity.
Yes. And because that pain is so terrifying to imagine, our brains trick us into thinking it is safer to simply never try.
So if you never attempt to write that novel, you never have to suffer the pain of publishers rejecting it.
You get to live your entire life with the comfortable, safe fantasy that you could have been a brilliant writer if only you had found the time.
You protect your potential by never testing it.
Exactly. The human ego prefers the comfort of unfulfilled potential over the harsh reality of a failed attempt.
Wow. I need to pause here and challenge this entire philosophy, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
We're talking about following dreams and ignoring practical advice. But doesn't this concept of a personal legend sound highly elitist?
How do you mean?
Well, it sounds like a luxury reserved for wealthy people.
Ah,
Think about the billions of people in the world who do not have the luxury to sit quietly and ponder their magical destiny.
right. They're just trying to get by.
They are working two exhausting jobs just to buy groceries for their children. They are trying to survive in extreme poverty.
Yeah.
Isn't it a bit cruel, or at least tone-deaf, to tell a single mother working 60 hours a week that she needs to abandon her safe map and follow her wild dreams?
That is one of the most frequent and valid criticisms raised by readers, actually.
I can imagine.
But to understand Coelho's perspective, we have to look closely at his own life story. He did not invent this philosophy from the comfort of a billionaire's yacht.
He didn't.
No. Paulo Coelho grew up in Brazil under difficult circumstances. His desire to be a writer was met with such extreme resistance from his family that his parents actually committed him to a mental institution.
Wait, really? They locked him in a hospital simply because he wanted to be an artist?
Yes. They believed his obsession with writing was a literal sign of mental illness. They wanted him to pursue a stable career in law.
That is awful.
He escaped the institution, but his struggles continued. Later in life, during the military dictatorship in Brazil, he was arrested and subjected to torture because of his artistic work.
Oh my goodness.
He lost everything multiple times. His path was paved with extreme trauma and poverty. Therefore, when he discusses the personal legend, he speaks from a place of deep, agonizing struggle, not privilege.
Wow. Knowing that background definitely shifts how we should interpret the book. He isn't ignoring hardship, he survived it.
Exactly. His core argument is that following your personal legend does not require millions of dollars or abundant free time.
Then what does it require?
It is fundamentally a shift in your mental state. It is about making a quiet, internal decision to keep the dream alive, even in small ways.
Small steps.
Right. Taking tiny, slow steps toward a purpose can drastically change the quality of your daily life, even if you are still working that exhausting job to survive.
So you don't have to dramatically quit your factory job today and walk barefoot into the desert?
No, please don't do that. If your true calling is to be a painter, But you work in a warehouse for 10 hours a day to feed your family.
Mm.
You obviously cannot quit.
Right.
But following your legend might mean spending just 20 minutes every Sunday morning sketching with a cheap pencil on scrap paper.
And that small action makes a difference.
Yes, that small, persistent action keeps the internal fire burning. It connects you to your true identity, providing a sense of energy that the warehouse job drains away.
Let's make this even more relatable for everyday situations for our listeners.
Right.
Think about the process of learning a new language. A lot of people study English, for example, purely as a mechanical tool for their career.
Right. They think, if I memorize these vocabulary words, I might get a promotion at my corporate job.
Exactly. And learning a language with only that financial motivation usually feels like a heavy burden.
It feels like forced homework.
But imagine someone whose personal legend involves connecting with diverse cultures. They have a deep desire to travel, to hear the stories of people from different continents, and to feel like a citizen of the world.
Oh, that completely changes the feeling.
Right. For that person, studying English vocabulary is no longer just corporate homework. It is a necessary step on the path toward their true self.
The physical action is identical staring at a textbook, but the internal emotional experience is totally transformed.
Yes. The underlying intention completely changes how we experience the struggle.
When the effort is connected to your compass, the difficulty has profound meaning. It stops being a chore and becomes an adventure.
That is such a powerful lens to view our daily tasks through.
It really is.
So I encourage you, the listener, to pause and reflect on a dream you held tightly during childhood. Maybe it is something you've hidden away and haven't spoken aloud in 20 years.
What specifically is blocking you from taking a tiny step toward it today?
Is it the loud voice of society demanding you be realistic? Or is it your own quiet fear of not being good enough? Keep that question in mind.
A tough question, but so important.
Okay, so if we assume you find the courage to pull out that compass, the next obvious challenge is figuring out how to read it. How do you know which direction to walk?
That challenge brings us to one of the most famous and certainly the most heavily debated concepts in The Alchemist.
Which is?
It is Coelho's explanation of how the universe communicates with us. He calls this communication network the soul of the world.
The soul of the world. That is a very poetic phrase. How do we define that in simple terms?
Well, within the reality of the novel, the soul of the world represents the idea that absolutely everything in the universe is connected through a shared universal language.
Like everything is linked.
Right? Human beings, animals, trees, rivers, and even the rocks in the desert are all part of one massive living system.
It suggests there is no separation between us and our environment.
Exactly. And because everything is connected, Coelho argues that when you make the brave decision to actively follow your personal legend, the environment begins to interact with you.
You begin to notice omens.
Yes, omens.
Let's clarify the word omen for our context, because normally people think of omens in scary movies, like a black cat crossing the road.
Right, bad luck.
But here, an omen is simply a sign, right? A message meant to guide a decision.
A helpful directional marker. In the story, Santiago learns to read these omens everywhere he looks.
Where does he see them?
He sees them in the specific flight patterns of hawks circling in the sky. He hears them in a random sentence spoken by a stranger selling bread in the marketplace.
Wow.
He even finds guidance by opening a random book and reading the first sentence his eyes land on.
We need to unpack this concept very carefully. Because a lot of highly rational people will hear this and immediately roll their eyes. They will assume this is just magical thinking, fortune-telling, or reading tea leaves.
And that reaction is entirely expected in our modern scientific society. But it is crucial to understand that we can read Coelho's concept of omens as a profound metaphor for human psychology.
Like mindfulness.
Exactly. It's a metaphor for the practice of intense mindfulness and deep attention.
We hear the word mindfulness constantly today. It usually means being deeply present and paying attention to the current moment without distraction.
Right.
How does that relate to signs from the universe?
We can explain this using a well-documented neurological function called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, let's get into the science of it.
The human brain is constantly bombarded by millions of pieces of sensory information every single second. If you processed all of it, your brain would crash.
It would be too much data.
So the RAS acts as a filter. It deletes almost everything around you and only lets through the information it believes is important to your survival or your current goals.
Oh, this is the classic red car phenomenon, isn't it?
Perfect example.
Like, you decide you want to buy a specific bright red sports car. Suddenly, when you drive down the highway, You see that exact red car everywhere.
Exactly. The universe did not magically manufacture more red cars and drop them on the highway just for you.
Right.
The cars were always there. What changed was your internal filter. By setting a clear goal, you told your brain, red cars are now important.
So your brain stopped filtering them out.
Yes. And this perfectly explains the omens in The Alchemist. When you finally clarify your personal legend and commit to it, your brain physically alters how it processes reality.
That is fascinating.
You suddenly notice opportunities, conversations, and resources that you previously ignored because you just weren't looking for them.
That neurological explanation really grounds the poetry in hard science. It makes the mystical idea highly practical.
It does.
And this brings us to the single most famous quote in the entire book. It is printed on millions of posters and coffee mugs worldwide.
Oh, I know the one.
Coelho writes, "When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it."
It is a beautiful sentiment, but it is so often misunderstood as a passive promise.
Yeah, people think it means you just have to wish for something really hard, and magic forces will deliver it to your door.
Like placing an order with a cosmic restaurant.
Right, which is entirely wrong.
Completely wrong. In the context of the story in human psychology, the universe conspiring to help you means that your absolute focused determination turns you into a magnet for new possibilities.
Because you are actively looking.
Exactly. When you are deeply committed to a dream, your daily behavior changes. You speak with more passion, you ask better questions.
You approach strangers you would normally avoid. You read books you normally wouldn't open.
Right. Because your actions are different, the world reacts to you differently. The universe is simply responding to the new doors you were actively kicking open.
Your focus changes your behavior, and your behavior forces the environment to yield new results. I love that.
Me too.
But to maintain that level of focus and to spot these psychological omens, the book suggests we must adopt a specific mental state. You have a note here about the concept of the beginner's mind.
Yes, the beginner's mind. It is a concept originally found in Zen Buddhism, often referred to as Shoshin.
Shoshin.
Coelho masterfully weaves this Eastern philosophy into Santiago's desert journey. It is the ideal mental state for spotting omens.
Now, the opposite of a beginner's mind is an expert's mind. Why is being an expert a disadvantage here?
Well, an expert operates under the assumption that they already know how the system works. Because they have a vast amount of prior knowledge, their brain takes massive shortcuts to save energy.
They categorize information instantly.
Right. If an expert encounters a new situation, they immediately force it into a familiar box. If a piece of information doesn't fit their pre-existing rules, they tend to ignore it completely.
They become blind to surprise.
Exactly. Their previous knowledge acts like a wall blocking out anything new.
And a beginner.
A beginner operates from a place of admitted ignorance. They know nothing about the environment. Therefore, they cannot rely on mental shortcuts.
They have to pay attention.
They must observe the world with wide, fresh, alert eyes. Every tiny detail is potentially vital for their survival or success.
And in the story, Santiago acts like this, right?
Yes, Santiago travels to unfamiliar countries and harsh deserts. He survives because he acts like a beginner in every new location.
He pays close attention.
He carefully observes how the local people prepare their tea. He watches the subtle ways the wind moves the sand dunes. Because he uses a beginner's mind, he notices the subtle signs that the arrogant experts completely overlook.
That's so relevant today. Our modern corporate culture worships the idea of being the smartest expert in the room. We are terrified of looking like beginners because it feels like weakness.
It really does.
But this philosophy argues that clinging to the status of expert literally blinds you to the opportunities the world is trying to offer you.
By claiming you know everything, you close the communication channel with the soul of the world. You just stop learning.
Right. There is another profound concept introduced in the book, captured in a single Arabic word that Santiago learns. The word is maktub.
Maktub. It is a powerful philosophical anchor in the story. The literal translation is roughly, it is written.
Now, when modern audiences hear the phrase, "it is written," they usually associate it with a negative form of destiny. We call it fatalism.
Yes, fatalism. That is the belief that because the future is already decided, human choices do not matter.
It leads to apathy.
Right. People think, if it is written that I will fail this exam, then studying is useless. I will just sit on the couch and wait to fail.
It is a total surrender of personal agency. But how does maktub function differently in the context of The Alchemist?
In the book, maktub aligns much closer to the ancient Greek philosophy of Stoicism. specifically the concept of accepting your current reality without emotional resistance.
Give us an example of that.
Imagine Santiago is traveling in the desert and a sudden, violent sandstorm completely destroys his camp.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A fatalist would sit in the ruined camp, cry, and wait to die. An emotionally reactive person would stand up and scream at the sky, wasting precious energy being angry that the universe is unfair.
They fight the reality of the event.
But a person practicing maktub looks at the ruined camp and says, "The sandstorm happened. It is written. I cannot change the past."
They just accept.
They accept the harsh reality instantly, without wasting energy on anger or denial.
Yeah.
Then, and this is the crucial part, they take immediate action within that new reality.
Yeah.
They start gathering the surviving supplies to rebuild the camp.
I see. They find deep peace with the present moment, no matter how difficult it is, but they maintain total control over their response.
Exactly. Accepting the things you cannot control frees up massive amounts of mental energy to focus on the things you can control.
You observe the omens with a beginner's mind, you walk toward your legend, and when disaster strikes, you say, "Maktub," and keep walking.
Perfectly said.
Okay, I want to step into the role of the harsh skeptic again for a moment.
Bring it on.
We have discussed the universe conspiring, reading omens, and finding peace and destiny. But the skeptical view of all this asks a very blunt question. Isn't this entire system just a massive delusion built on confirmation bias?
But we should define confirmation bias clearly before answering that.
Sure. Confirmation bias is a well-documented flaw in human reasoning. It means our brains eagerly accept and remember any information that supports our pre-existing beliefs, while conveniently ignoring or forgetting any evidence that proves us wrong.
Right.
So, if a person believes the universe wants them to become a famous Hollywood actor, they will intensely remember the one day a minor director smiled at them in a coffee shop. They declare it a magical sign from the universe.
While simultaneously forgetting all the contrary evidence.
Exactly. They completely erase the memory of the 400 auditions where they were fiercely rejected.
Yeah.
Furthermore, as a society, we suffer from this bias. We only read biographies written by the lucky few who followed their dreams and succeeded.
We completely ignore the millions of unknown people who followed their compass, looked for omens, worked incredibly hard, and ended up completely bankrupt.
Right. The failures do not get publishing deals. So isn't Coelho just selling us a beautifully written psychological trick based on ignoring reality?
That is the most rigorous intellectual critique of the book, absolutely. And from a purely scientific standpoint, you are correct. The omens likely are a form of psychological framing rather than cosmic magic.
So it is a trick.
However, looking at the deeper narrative of the book reveals that Coelho is not ignoring the pain of reality.
How does the book address the reality of failure, then?
The book does not present a fairy tale where dreams come true simply because you wish for them. Santiago's journey is brutal. Oh yes. He is violently robbed of all his money. He is beaten nearly to death. He is forced into slave-like labor. He has to work in a boring crystal shop for an entire year just to afford a ticket to keep moving.
Wow, okay. The universe does not pamper him. It constantly breaks him down.
He faces a massive amount of objective failure.
So the omens don't guarantee success.
No. The profound secret of the omens is not that they guarantee an easy victory. The psychological trick of the omens is that they provide the necessary hope to keep you moving forward when every logical part of your brain is telling you to quit.
Ah, I see.
And this leads to the ultimate revelation of the story. When Santiago finally uncovers the physical treasure, the gold coins are almost irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Why?
Because the true treasure is the radical transformation of his character.
The journey fundamentally rewrote his identity.
Yes. If the universe had simply dropped a map to the gold in his lap on day one, he would have walked straight there. He would have been a rich shepherd, but he would have remained ignorant, fearful, and narrow-minded.
But by forcing him into the desert...
Exactly. The journey taught him new languages. It taught him how to survive extreme hardship. It taught him the deep nature of love. The pursuit of the goal forged him into a stronger, wiser human being.
Even if he had never found the physical gold, the transformation of his soul was permanent.
Exactly.
That really reframes the entire skeptical argument. Is believing in signs in a conspiring universe is just a psychological trick? It is an incredibly useful trick.
It is.
Because that belief generates the courage required to step into the unknown. The belief creates the forward motion, and the forward motion creates the friction that forces us to grow.
The illusion of the destination tricks us into undertaking the journey of growth.
Which flows perfectly into the next major theme. If the journey of growth is the most valuable experience a human can have, why do so many of us refuse to take it?
It's a great question.
Why do we park our cars on the side of the road and settle for a boring life? We touched on this earlier, but the book delivers a severe, almost frightening answer to this question.
We start because we are controlled by fear.
Fear. It's a universal biological response, but Coelho elevates it to the status of a primary villain.
He really does. He treats fear not just as an emotion, but as a destructive force.
The text is explicit on this point. Fear is the absolute greatest enemy of your personal legend.
External factors like a terrible economy, bad luck, or unsupportive parents are merely hurdles. Fear is a heavy concrete wall. It is the #1 assassin of human potential.
Let's dissect the mechanics of this fear. When we stand at the edge of a new adventure, what exactly is the brain terrified of?
The brain is terrified of emotional suffering. We imagine a scenario where we try our absolute hardest, risk our reputation, and end up failing.
We imagine the humiliation and the crushing disappointment.
Exactly. In the book, there is a powerful mentor figure called the Alchemist. He gives Santiago a piece of profound wisdom. He says, "Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself."
The fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. That's a brilliant observation of human psychology.
It's so accurate.
The anticipation of pain is almost always more intense and paralyzing than the actual pain of an event.
When you actually fail at something, the reality is usually mundane. You lose some money, your pride is wounded, but you wake up the next morning and the sun is still shining.
You realize you survived.
Right. But the imagined failure, the monster living in your head before you take action, keeps you paralyzed in a state of chronic anxiety.
Right.
You suffer endlessly without ever moving.
And Coelho takes this observation and builds a very heavy philosophical argument on top of it. He argues that trying and failing is painful, but it is not the worst fate. What does he consider the ultimate human tragedy?
The ultimate tragedy, the greatest suffering a human being can endure, is reaching the end of life having never tried at all.
Existing in a state of permanent safety, avoiding all risk, and therefore avoiding all growth.
Yes, psychological studies of the elderly confirm this philosophy perfectly. Researchers like Tom Gilovich have conducted extensive interviews with people in hospice care at the very end of their lives.
And what do they find?
When asked about their deepest regrets, these people almost never mention the risks they took that ended in failure.
They do not spend their final days regretting the business that went bankrupt or the book that received bad reviews.
No, because the psychological immune system can heal the pain of a direct failure. They know they had the courage to enter the arena.
Right.
Instead, the overwhelming majority of people on their deathbeds express agonizing regret over the things they omitted from their lives. They regret the career they were too scared to try. They regret the person they loved but never confessed their feelings to.
The agonizing pain of asking what if is a chronic condition that lasts a lifetime. The sharp pain of failure fades away.
Exactly. This connects directly to a concept you highlighted in your notes: spiritual sickness.
Spiritual sickness. Explain that.
Coelho implies that when you clearly hear your calling, but you allow fear to force you into hiding, that unexpressed energy does not simply vanish.
Where does it go?
It becomes trapped inside you, and it begins to rot. It creates a spiritual sickness.
Unused potential turns toxic.
People who betray their own dreams rarely become happy, well-adjusted individuals. They often develop a hardened shell of cynicism.
Cynicism acts as a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
A cynical person constantly mocks the world, viewing all sincerity and ambition as foolish.
Right. They convince themselves that trying is stupid so they don't feel bad about quitting.
You see this behavior everywhere. The people who are the fastest to criticize a new artist or mock a small business owner or make fun of someone trying to lose weight at the gym are almost always people who are deeply dissatisfied with their own stagnation.
Exactly. If you are quietly writing a novel and your friend constantly says, "Why waste your weekend typing? No one reads anymore. You'll never get published," that friend is not offering helpful literary critique.
No, that friend is aggressively protecting their own fragile ego.
Because if you actually finish and publish that novel, your success forces them to confront a terrifying truth. They also have the time and the ability to chase their dream, but they were simply too cowardly to do it.
Your bravery acts as a mirror that reflects their fear.
The cynicism is a symptom of their spiritual sickness.
So to combat this paralysis, Coelho offers a refreshing perspective. He writes, "It's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting."
It's the possibility, that makes life interesting, that shifts the focus completely.
It does. He does not say that achieving the goal is what brings happiness. It is the tension of the pursuit.
Waking up every morning knowing you are actively fighting for something deeply meaningful gives your life vibrant flavor and urgent energy.
A life that is 100% safe, where every variable is controlled and risk is eliminated, is ultimately a life devoid of color.
The adventure itself is the medicine that cures the spiritual sickness.
Now, I want to pivot and examine a highly complex theme in the book that intersects with both fear and the journey. That theme is love.
The portrayal of romantic love in The Alchemist is very specific and highly debated.
During his journey across the desert, Santiago arrives at an oasis and falls deeply in love with a woman named Fatima. He is immediately faced with an agonizing dilemma. He can stay at the beautiful, safe oasis with the woman he loves, or he can leave her behind to face the deadly desert and continue the search for his treasure.
And Coelho's philosophy regarding this choice is incredibly strict.
He outlines a very definitive rule for romantic relationships. He states that true love will always support a personal legend.
Coelho argues that if a romantic partner requires you to abandon your ultimate dream or demands that you shrink your true self to make them feel secure, then the emotion they are feeling is not real love. It is possessiveness.
In the story, Fatima proves her love by telling Santiago he must leave. She identifies as a woman of the desert, accustomed to waiting, and she insists that he must fulfill his destiny to be whole.
It is a profoundly idealized vision. Love is presented as a wind that pushes your sails forward, not an anchor that holds your ship in the harbor.
I'm going to put on my skeptic's hat once again because this element of the book can be highly problematic. Isn't this advice alarmingly individualistic and, frankly, quite selfish?
Outline the skeptical argument. Why is it selfish?
Well, the philosophy sounds like a convenient excuse to abandon your responsibilities, follow your personal dream, and refuse to let anyone hold you back. That works fine for a single teenager in the desert.
Right.
But what about modern adults with severe obligations? Imagine a person with a spouse, a mortgage, and 3 young children. They cannot simply wake up on a Tuesday and announce, "My personal legend is to become a famous surfer in Hawaii, so I am leaving."
If you truly love me, you will stay here, raise the kids alone, and support my destiny.
Exactly. If someone interprets the book literally, it absolutely sounds like a blank check for narcissistic behavior and abandoning your family.
It sounds like the ultimate defense for a midlife crisis.
Yes.
However, the sophisticated way to read a parable is to extract the principle, not the literal action. The key is finding a sustainable balance. If we look closely at Santiago's actions, he does not behave recklessly. He spends a year working in a shop to secure funds. He takes calculated, responsible steps. Following your legend does not require delivering cruel ultimatums to your loved ones.
So it does not have to be a choice between abandon my family or destroy my soul.
Exactly. You can pursue the dream gradually. You must find a delicate harmony between your external duties to your family and your internal duty to your soul.
Give me an example of that harmony.
Let's return to the parent who desires to be a writer. Fulfilling your responsibilities means you continue to work your primary job, you pay the bills, and you remain emotionally present for your children.
Right.
But harmony involves communicating with your spouse. You might say, to feel like myself, I need 3 hours every Sunday afternoon completely alone to write.
And according to Coelho's definition of true love, a supportive spouse would recognize the importance of that request. They would say, I see that writing feeds your soul. I will gladly take the children to the park for 3 hours every Sunday so you can work on your legend.
That is the modern application of the philosophy. True love provides structural support for the legend within the messy reality of a shared life.
Conversely, if the spouse reacts with anger and says, writing is a stupid waste of time, you must spend every single free second doing chores or earning more money, that is the restrictive, possessive energy Coelho warns against.
Love should never demand the suffocation of your identity.
The goal is mutual empowerment, not selfish isolation.
Right.
This provides a fantastic moment for you, the listener, to evaluate your own environment. Think deeply about the people you spend the most time with. Do you recognize the dark pattern of cynicism we discussed?
Are there friends or colleagues who chose a safe, boring path and now subtly mock any ambition you show?
And on the positive side, who in your life demonstrates Coelho's version of true love? Who are the people that actively encourage your weird, specific dreams, even in small ways? Identifying those supportive voices is crucial.
It radically changes how you filter the advice you receive from others.
Okay, we have spent a long time analyzing the deep, poetic philosophy of the book. We understand the personal legend, the omens of the soul of the world, and the paralyzing mechanics of fear.
But philosophy is useless if it stays trapped in a book.
Exactly. How do we pull these ideas out of the Egyptian desert and apply them to a stressful Tuesday in the modern world?
A deep dive is incomplete without actionable, practical tools.
Exactly. We have reviewed the source material and extracted 4 concrete psychological tools that any listener can start using today to build their compass. Let's walk through them. What is the first practical application?
We call the first tool the personal legend map. This is a quiet journaling exercise designed to bypass your adult logic.
We noted earlier that children understand their core desires before society demands they become realistic.
Right, so to access that buried information, sit down with a physical pen and paper and complete this single sentence. When I was 10 years old, I deeply wanted to.
When I was 10 years old, I deeply wanted to. The instruction is to write quickly without judging the answer.
Let the subconscious answer. Perhaps you wrote that you wanted to be an explorer, or you wanted to build intricate tree houses, or maybe you wanted to be a stage magician.
Let's follow that last example. Assume a 45-year-old accountant writes, "When I was 10, I wanted to be a magician." They obviously cannot quit their accounting firm today to perform card tricks on the street. How does writing that sentence help them?
The goal is not to adopt the literal childhood career. The goal is to isolate the core emotional feeling that the childhood dream provided.
Okay.
You must ask yourself, why did the idea of being a magician appeal to me so intensely? Was it the joy of standing on a stage and entertaining a crowd? Was it the intellectual challenge of solving complex puzzles? Or was it the desire to create a sense of wonder and surprise for other people?
That is a brilliant translation. If the core desire was creating a sense of wonder, the accountant can look at their current rigid life and ask, how can I inject the creation of wonder into my current career or my weekend hobbies?
The childhood dream acts as an emotional map, guiding you back to your true motivations before the stress of paying rent buried them.
Tool number 2 is the beginner's mind practice. We explored the theory of this earlier, but how do we turn it into a daily habit?
This tool is a cognitive reset switch for moments of high stress. Imagine you find yourself in a highly frustrating, repetitive situation.
Like what?
Your natural habit is to become anxious, angry, and to act like a cynical expert who knows everything is doomed to fail.
A perfect example is being trapped in a dysfunctional 2-hour corporate meeting that is going around in circles.
In that exact moment, instead of letting your blood pressure rise, force your brain to stop and silently ask this question. If a complete beginner walked into this room right now, what obvious detail would they notice that my expert brain is ignoring?
What would a beginner notice?
A beginner wouldn't understand the complex office politics. They might simply observe that the project manager looks exhausted and terrified. Or they might look at the central problem and suggest a laughably simple solution, a solution the experts ignored, because that isn't how we do things in this industry.
Asking the question instantly pulls you out of your emotional frustration and shifts your brain into a state of calm, objective observation.
It kills the ego and activates curiosity.
I am definitely implementing that in my next stressful meeting. What is the third tool?
Tool number 3 is an exercise in mindfulness we call the sign of the day. This is the modern way to practice reading omens.
How does one practice reading signs without becoming overly superstitious?
Once a single day, intentionally interrupt your normal routine. Pick a random mundane moment. Perhaps you are standing in line at the grocery store or staring out a window while a computer program loads.
Right.
Stop your internal dialogue. Observe your immediate environment and ask, what is this specific moment trying to teach me?
What is this moment trying to teach me?
We must emphasize again, this is not a search for supernatural magic. You are not waiting for a hawk to drop a golden ring at your feet.
Right.
You are simply training your reticular activating system to pay intense attention to the present moment. Perhaps the long, frustrating line at the store is a reminder that your baseline state is too rushed, and the moment is teaching you patience.
Or perhaps you observe 2 strangers sharing a laugh, and it reminds you that you have neglected to call your best friend.
It is about using the external physical world as a mirror to reflect your internal emotional needs. It breaks the terrible modern habit of spending every spare second staring at a smartphone screen.
It forces your brain to remain engaged with reality.
The final practical exercise, tool number 4, directly attacks the problem of fear. You title this, Speak Your Fear Out Loud.
From a psychological standpoint, this is the most critical tool on the list. When you are terrified of taking a risk, whether it is asking for a raise, publishing a piece of art, or ending a bad relationship, your instinct is to keep the fear locked silently inside your head.
When a fear remains unspoken, it feels enormous. It feels like an infinite, shapeless monster lurking in the dark.
Because the fear is undefined, it controls you. The practice is incredibly simple, but physically uncomfortable. You must vocalize the exact specific fear out loud.
You could say it to an empty room, or speak it to a highly trusted friend.
Use your vocal cords and say, I am terrified that if I apply for this new job and fail, my family will think I am incompetent.
What is the scientific mechanism that makes speaking out loud so effective? Why does it differ from just thinking the thought?
It relies on brain anatomy. When fear exists merely as a vague feeling, it is primarily processed in the amygdala, which is the primitive emotional alarm center of the brain. The amygdala does not process logic or language. It only processes survival panic.
So the feeling is overwhelming.
Exactly. However, when you force yourself to formulate a coherent sentence and physically speak it out loud, you neurologically force the thought out of the amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex is the highly evolved, logical, analytical part of the brain located behind the forehead.
By speaking, you literally change the physical location where the brain processes the problem. You force the monster into the light. You give the vague fear a specific name, a shape, and clear boundaries.
Frequently, the moment you hear your own voice say the fear out loud, I'm terrified people will laugh at my painting, your logical brain evaluates the sentence and realizes it sounds slightly ridiculous.
Or at the very least, it sounds like a manageable problem rather than a fatal threat. Translating the emotion into language strips away half of its paralyzing power. It allows you to analyze the fear instead of just suffering from it.
Out of all the tools we discussed, speaking the fear out loud is the prerequisite for all the others. Fear is the ultimate gatekeeper. You cannot practice a beginner's mind or search for omens if you are too paralyzed by anxiety to leave your house.
Breaking the silence breaks the paralysis.
The neuroscience behind that is fascinating.
I strongly encourage you, the listener, to select just one of these 4 tools to experiment with this week. Write down your childhood dream, or speak your current fear to an empty room. Observe how a tiny shift in behavior changes your mental state.
We have found massive inspiration in Coelho's philosophy, but a rigorous analysis requires us to step back and look at the whole picture. We must examine the flaws.
No piece of literature is perfect, regardless of how many millions of copies it sells.
The immense popularity of a book does not grant it immunity from intellectual critique. We need to transition into an honest evaluation of where The Alchemist falls short, or what critical aspects of the human experience it conveniently ignores.
What is the primary criticism leveled against the text?
The most practical criticism is that the book operates entirely in the clouds. It is not a functional manual for modern existence.
Right.
The emotional resonance of the book is undeniably powerful. It injects the reader with inspiration and a desperate desire to change their life. However, it provides zero structural guidance for executing that change.
It is a beautiful parable about wandering the desert, but it offers no advice for a person waking up on a dark, rainy Monday morning.
Yeah, if you are drowning in credit card debt, managing a chronic illness, and working a terrible job, the instruction to listen to the wind for omens is practically useless.
The book operates from an altitude of 30,000 feet. It completely ignores the tedious, unglamorous, frustrating logistics that make up 90% of adult life.
It provides the emotional spark, but it does not provide the engine.
A second major criticism involves the narrative archetype Coelho relies on. The story heavily romanticizes the concept of the solo hero.
The myth of the lone wanderer conquering the world.
Throughout the journey, Santiago relies almost exclusively on his own internal strength. He meets interesting figures, kings, merchants, alchemists, but these people are essentially just vending machines that dispense wisdom before he leaves them behind.
He constantly abandons his community to pursue his personal goal.
But sociologically and historically, human survival and success are rarely solo endeavors. Our greatest achievements are deeply reliant on complex systems of community, family support, and mutual dependence.
The solo hero narrative is a dangerous myth. By focusing so intensely on the solitary inner voice, the book fundamentally dismisses the immense value of collective effort. In reality, a true personal legend often involves serving a community and elevating the people around you, rather than leaving them behind in the dust.
Which flows directly into a third, highly critical flaw in the book's logic, We mentioned it briefly before, but we need to examine the concept of survivor bias.
Survivor bias is a cognitive shortcut where we evaluate a system based solely on the people who succeeded, while rendering the massive invisible graveyard of failures completely silent.
Let's look at how the parable utilizes this bias. Santiago takes objectively terrifying risks. He sells his entire flock of sheep, which was his only source of income. He wanders into active tribal war zones. He hands his money over to known thieves.
From a logical standpoint, these are disastrous decisions.
But because it is a parable, the universe magically rewards his reckless behavior. In the end, he uncovers a literal chest overflowing with gold coins.
The narrative guarantees that bold risks are always materially rewarded.
But applying that logic to the real world is catastrophic. The structure of the story ignores the permanent, life-altering losses that real people suffer when they take blind risks.
If a person reads this book, becomes inspired, sells their family home to open a niche restaurant, and then a global economic crisis hits, the universe does not magically bury a chest of gold in their backyard to save them.
The restaurant goes bankrupt, the money evaporates, and the family faces extreme poverty.
The harsh truth is that massive risk frequently results in objective material failure. The Alchemist heavily implies that if your belief is strong enough, the universe acts as a safety net, ensuring you won't starve. That premise is demonstrably false, and if adopted literally, it's financially reckless.
This highlights why the psychological interpretation we discussed, the idea that the treasure is the wisdom gained, not the literal gold, is the only responsible way to consume this book. If you read it expecting a financial payout, you invite ruin.
There's one final layer of criticism we should explore, involving a clash of global perspectives.
What's that?
The entire foundation of the personal legend, this relentless ultimate focus on my unique destiny, my inner voice, and my dreams, is a deeply Western philosophical concept.
It is the ultimate expression of extreme individualism.
In vast portions of the world, particularly in Eastern philosophies, African Ubuntu philosophy, and many indigenous cultures, the idea of elevating the individual ego above the group is viewed as immature or even destructive.
In collectivist cultures, the highest moral good is found in social harmony, honoring family duty, and sacrificing personal desires for the survival and prosperity of the community.
The concept of the self is entirely secondary to the health of the group.
Therefore, if a reader from a deeply collectivist background reads a story about a young man who happily abandons his family, his societal role, and his community to walk thousands of miles to find personal wealth, the story will likely feel alien and morally questionable.
The book assumes that individual self-actualization is the undisputed peak of human existence. We must recognize that this is a cultural assumption, not a universal biological law.
That cultural critique is essential. It serves as a reminder that every piece of literature is viewed through the specific cultural lens of its author. We are not required to accept Coelho's philosophy as an absolute flawless religion in order to extract intense value from his metaphors.
We take the psychological tools that serve us, and we leave behind the extreme idealism that does not fit reality.
As we reach the conclusion of this expensive deep dive, we need to synthesize these massive ideas. We have torn the book apart. Now let's put the core message back together.
Despite the valid criticisms regarding individualism and survivor bias, we cannot ignore the cultural impact of the story. There is a profound reason this text has sold 65 million copies.
The core emotional frequency of the book bypasses our logical defenses and resonates with a fundamental human desire for purpose.
If we weigh everything we have explored today, the childhood dreams, the neurological omens, the agonizing fear of failure, and the necessary criticisms, what is the ultimate synthesized takeaway from The Alchemist?
The essential philosophy distills down to this. The ultimate treasure in human life is never the physical destination. It is never the specific career, the financial wealth, or the social status you are chasing.
The true treasure is the evolution of your character. It is who you become during the agonizing process of the search.
The friction of the journey is what shapes the traveler.
The dream you hold in your mind acts strictly as a compass. It is a navigational tool designed by your subconscious to point you toward the exact struggles you need to experience in order to grow.
Walking the path indicated by that compass will be exhausting. You will likely face objective failure, and that failure will cause genuine pain.
But the most catastrophic, destructive choice a human being can make is allowing fear to keep them sitting safely in the harbor, refusing to ever set sail.
The compass forces growth through motion. For listeners who feel a spark of inspiration from this deep dive, those who want to continue exploring the psychology of purpose, fear, and human existence, We always want to provide a pathway for further learning.
We have curated a list of texts that approach these same themes from vastly different angles.
Let's review the reading list. What is the first recommendation?
If the spiritual journey aspect of The Alchemist appealed to you, the natural next step is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
Great choice.
Like Coelho's work, it is a beautifully written parable about a man searching for ultimate meaning. However, it is deeply grounded in Eastern philosophy and Buddhism. It offers a profound exploration of the soul, but relies much less on the extreme Western individualism we criticized earlier.
A brilliant classic. What is the second text?
We spend significant time discussing the beginner's mind, reading omens, and focusing on the present environment. To master the psychology behind those concepts, I recommend The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It is a dense, non-fiction exploration of how human beings generate their own suffering by obsessing over past regrets and future anxieties. It is a manual for achieving the extreme mindfulness required to actually see the signs in your daily life.
That sounds like the practical instruction manual Coelho left out. What is recommendation number 3?
The third book is Man's Search for Meaning by the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl.
That is a profoundly heavy book, but arguably one of the most important of the 20th century.
Frankl survived the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust concentration camps. He observed that the prisoners who managed to maintain a tiny sliver of internal purpose or meaning were statistically more likely to survive the extreme psychological and physical torture.
If The Alchemist is the poetic romantic version of finding your life's purpose, Frankl's book is the brutally realistic, scientifically observed proof that having a personal legend is literally a matter of life and death.
It grounds the philosophy in the darkest extremes of human endurance.
And the final recommendation.
The final recommendation serves as a direct intellectual counterargument to Coelho. It is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Including a counterargument provides perfect balance. Why this specific text?
We discussed how the concept of a personal legend can easily mutate into arrogance. It can trick you into believing you are the uniquely special main character of the universe, and everyone else is just an extra in your movie.
Holiday uses historical case studies and ancient Stoic philosophy to demonstrate that our own ego, our obsession with our special destiny, is usually the exact thing that destroys our success.
It is a highly effective antidote to read if you find yourself becoming a bit too arrogant after finishing The Alchemist.
It keeps the ego in check while the compass guides the way. And of course, the unspoken final recommendation is simply to reread The Alchemist itself every 5 or 10 years.
Great literature acts as a mirror. The words on the page remain identical, but because you have accumulated new failures and successes, you see completely different omens reflected back at you.
The text is static, but the reader's psychology is constantly evolving. Well, we have covered an immense psychological landscape today.
We really have.
We began with the metaphor of abandoning a safe map in favor of a wild compass. We examined how society lovingly attempts to crush our ambitions, how the brain's focus forces the universe to seemingly conspire in our favor, the paralyzing neurological mechanics of fear, and the undeniable dangers of the solo hero myth.
It has been a rigorous exploration of the human mind.
To conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. We opened by asking if you had surrendered a dream to the safety of a predictable map.
A map is comforting because it guarantees you will arrive safely, but it rarely leads anywhere interesting.
The compass of your purpose is quiet, and following it offers zero guarantees.
The direction must be actively, repeatedly chosen every single day.
So here's the concrete question I want you to carry with you this week. You do not need to announce the answer to anyone, but you owe yourself total honesty. What is your actual personal legend?
Beneath the layers of adult realism, what is the one specific endeavor you know, deep in your bones, that you must explore before your time runs out?
Locate the compass hidden in the drawer.
Locate it, hold it, and use the psychological tool we discussed. Speak the name of that dream and the fear holding you back out loud to an empty room.
Once the fear is named, what is one laughably small, singular step you can take in the direction the needle is pointing before this week ends? You do not need to cross the ocean tomorrow. Just take one microscopic step.
The desert of life is impossibly wide, and the journey is terrifying. But the only true, unforgivable failure is refusing to take the first step.